Are you willing to accept Christ's invitation to know Him more intimately, love Him more intensely, and follow Him more closely, and then go out into the world and live His good news? If you say yes, then you could be the 13th apostle. Join Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey, the odd couple of Catholic radio, as they ride the radio waves 2 by 2 to share the goodness, beauty, and truth of Jesus Christ and His church. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the 13th apostle.
We are born with the God-given right to move efficiently, gracefully, and joyfully. We lose this right only through society's mind-body split, faulty modes of physical education, and overemphasis on winning. We pose a simple and radical notion that within each of us, regardless of age, sex, or physical condition, there exists an ultimate athlete waiting to be born. This evokes the transcendent moment in sport, the catch that defies gravity and chance, the play that makes time stand still. As emblematic of the greater game, embodying the spirit of sport. A game we all can play to depth and breadth of body and soul. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the 13th Apostle, where we explore the good, beautiful, and true of the Catholic faith and the Catholic Church. This is Tom Caffrey, and with my partner, Dan Duddy. How you, Dan?
Hey, Tommy. How are you?
All right. How you doing?
I'm doing quite well. Did you write that, Tom? I'm sorry, I don't recognize it.
No. That was by George Leonard, whom probably nobody's going to know. And I know this because I bought his book, The Ultimate Athlete, it was published in 1975. And obviously with a couple of words in there, God-given, body and soul. He's not an atheist. Now, we can't go and say, okay, he's Catholic. But the point is that the ultimate athlete was, and George Leonard, he was, in the 60s, he and a friend of his started a movement, a group called the Human Potential Movement. And it, like most things, was big out in California, and then it moved east. But he starts off the book talking about Babcock, a boy in junior high who was outside with the rest of his class in a physical education class. And George Leonard was walking by this school, and right at the time when the teacher, the phys ed teacher, was berating this kid who was overweight and couldn't do a pull-up. And he just heard, Babcock! And so George Leonard started things for him, and he really went deep and big with this whole thing about what does it mean to be an athlete, and what does it mean to be a sportsman, and what does it mean for each individual life and for society. And so that was, it took off, and it went kind of big, but the reason why I thought of that, it just brought me back to this whole idea of, doing research for this episode and reading psychologists' reports, big surveys that were put out, published in educationweek.org about youth sports and the many, many problems with it. This was all prompted by an article that I had seen in America Magazine, the magazine of the Jesuits. And it's very provocative title. You can tell us the title, Dan.
Yeah, is sports ruining religion?
Yeah, well, soccer versus Sunday Mass.
Yeah, that was the subtitle with the picture of Pope Francis, I believe. I don't have it in front of me right now with this autographed soccer ball.
Yeah.
One of the European teams. Yeah.
January, this month, it was published in America Magazine. And it's soccer versus Sunday Mass. How youth sports are undermining religion and hurting our kids and ruining their faith. And interestingly enough, it's by a Catholic priest who has his own children.
Yes. Yeah.
And they are in sports. But he's a convert, obviously, from Anglicanism. And I know that you responded after I sent the article out. You responded pretty quickly, and certainly when we're in this area, I think of you, and as I've gotten to know you, sometimes I think this is not even in Dan's world. At least some of this, because you were driven to win, and I know the difference for you, and it ties in strong with this article about faith. You know, the sports and faith, and you developed, well, certainly at my son and Kevin and your son's school, Monsignor, at the time, Monsignor Donovan High School, now Donovan Catholic High School in Toms River, New Jersey, where you were the head football coach, but instituting that virtue program, tying it in with the Catholic faith. But this article, it's a very provocative title, and it was focusing on, well, the international sport of football, not American football, but as we know, it's soccer, and saying, you know, certainly travel teams and kids being so busy, they are not going to Mass. It's a tough thing, you know.
Sure is. I believe it's getting worse, but on the other hand, I also believe it's getting better. The article is loaded. I remember writing that back to you that, wow, this is really loaded. But the whole problem is loaded, and it's moving quickly. And once again, it's moving, on one hand, it's moving in the wrong direction. On the other hand, it's moving in a very good direction. When I was Kevin's coach, I had reached out. Well, firstly, I found out by asking a priest at a retreat how I can, inject Catholicism more profoundly into my football program, because I found myself at a Catholic high school. And if I was going to call myself Catholic, well, one thing is I better be practicing it. Otherwise, I'm a lying fool. And if I'm going to call myself a coach at a Catholic high school, then I better be evangelizing my athletes while I'm doing so. Because I did not have to leave the building to go find youngsters to evangelize. They were begging to get on my roster. And they would have done anything to do so. Not anything, but you get the point. Mm-hmm. Our youngsters are very impressionable, and it's the coaches who make the deepest impressions, good or bad. And it had become this virtue program is what we called it. And you just said that, which is there are a lot of components to it, but it had become something that really saved myself by doing so. And our Lord, that's what he tells us. That's the best way for an adult Christian is to become the steward, the keeper of those put in our keep. And the best way for us to save ourselves, not the only way to save ourselves, but is by saving others and inviting them in the spirit of meekness before you. And then our Lord will gladly let us walk on their heels and follow them. And the sport of football is just a great allegory for such. And I think Kevin will tell you, and I trust many, many others will tell you that they were positively affected by the game of football, because it had been, the virtues of the Catholic Church had been bled into everything that we did. And this Sunday problem, whereas our families are not attending Mass because of sports conflicts, we tried very, very hard, myself and my staff and my administration, very hard to get our families back to Mass. I mean, all I had to do was ask the kids in the locker room. We were bold, how many of your families go to Mass? And it was legitimately probably less than 20%, less than 2 out of 10. Mm. Because we stood for something so profoundly, I bet you it was only one of those two hands that was actually telling the truth.
And they weren't even playing sports. They weren't playing, your team wasn't playing on Sundays, and they still didn't go to Mass.
That's right. And we didn't do anything on Sundays. Other high schools around us on our schedule, they did practice on Sundays, or at the very least, they watched game film. And we didn't do that. And I told my staff, you're not going to have anything coming from me on Sunday. If you guys want to go and have your own, assistant coaches type meeting, go for it. But nothing is going to be, required by me to do so. But what we started to do was, Tom, when we had, say our football banquet, for example, I intentionally had it on a Sunday, and I intentionally had a brunch that followed the 9:00 mass. So that was part of the banquet, that we were going to go to that mass and we were going to reflect on, the gospel, have a presentation about today's gospel and so forth, and bring it to family and bring it to sports. And it was beautiful. I mean, every single parent came to it because that's what we did. Like, we put our foot down and we said, if you're going to wear the blue and the white at Donovan Catholic, this is what we do for our football banquet, the end of the year banquet. And we did it in other situations too. And they came. But my point is, I'm not looking for a pat on the back for that. My point is that not too many people are really doing that. I mean, the gym doors are opening on a Sunday morning at 8:30 in the morning, the gymnasium doors, and the people that are going to the practices at 8:30 or the games that are 8:30 are fighting for parking spaces with those that are going to mass at the exact same time. And one set of cars is walking into the gym, and the other set of people from the cars are walking into the mass. It's an obvious thing. You can see it physically happening. You can see the conflict every Sunday morning.
That's a good image. Yeah, I mean,
but Tom,
go ahead.
But Tom,
yeah, sure.
but it starts with the cold fact that door was allowed to be opened on that Sunday morning. Go ahead.
And if the door was not allowed to be opened by, let's say, the principal or the athletic director, then the parents would complain. How far back do we go? So we got individual parents, and then enough parents that form a group, and then that large group becomes a society, and this society has its culture, and sports is everywhere. Professional sports, college sports, which might as well be professional. Certainly the big ones, the two big ones, basketball and baseball. I think what college players now can get paid for their likeness, their image and likeness.
Name, image, and likeness. I'm going to let you continue, but I want to tell you that the national championship was just played, and it's flat out boldly now said by the broadcasters. They named the amount of money that was going into the starting lineup of Ohio State University last night. And, well, this is being aired on Saturday, versus the amount of money that was going into Notre Dame's players. And it was astronomical. It was like varsity playing against JV team as far as money goes, and the attraction of superior athletes that went into Ohio State versus those in Notre Dame. There were 7, they call them 5-star athletes at Ohio State, and there was 1 5-star athlete at Notre Dame, all founded upon money being paid.
All right, we all know what you're doing. You're building a case in defense of Notre Dame's loss. I'm sorry. I feel badly for you. But see, that's kind of like this. Our politics now. I mean, Dems that has gets. If you got the money, if you're the haves, you got a big edge over the have-nots or those who don't have as much. And okay, so the millionaires and billionaires, I mean, record break it seems like every election, certainly senatorial, maybe congressional representative, and definitely presidential. I mean, each year, each cycle, it seems like it's record breaking for how much money is spent on that. And no different in sports. I mean, this has been going back for a long time. The major markets, they get all the money for advertising and whatnot. And it's like our dear friend Jim Mulvihill has often said, follow the money. Follow the money. And the money is where it's at today. And you can't serve 2 masters, as our Lord told us. Maybe today some people think that there are 2 masters, faith and sport. But I don't think so. From everything I've read and my experiences, there's only one master, and sport is king, because cash is king, and cash will get your child a scholarship, and so parents go ballistic. There was, again, with some of the research preparing for this episode, the massive resignations nationwide, tens of thousands of high school referees of a variety of sports throwing in the towel. Say, some states are scrambling to try to find referees.
New Jersey is.
Okay. And actually, the last state I was reading about was Vermont, so New Jersey, because parents have become so violent, against the referees, against other parents, even, for some, against the children on the other team. And so, and part of it is, okay, with this vicarious living through our children, all right? We want them to win because that's going to make us look good. I'm a good parent because my son or my daughter succeeded in this or that. And by definition, that means I'm not a good parent if my child didn't do well in that. So, and then let's throw in the tremendously, disgustingly high cost of a college education today. And the mania of trying to get a scholarship, to get a scholarship for any college, but certainly maybe a name college and whatnot. And still, a tiny, tiny percentage will go on to play professional sports.
Very, very small percentage. It's a fraction of 1% in most of our big sports go on to play, in their Major League Baseball, NFL, or NBA. Tom, I was at a wrestling match last week, and wrestling. Kevin, your son Kevin was a wrestler. I had a couple of boys that wrestled, and I was with our weight training coach at this at the school that I now work at, teach at, and coach at. He said, "Coach Duddy, come here. I want you to meet this kid." And I shook hands with a 6th grader, and I stepped away after a 6th grade conversation, and which didn't take long. And he said, he's considered to be the number one, 98-pounder in the nation right now. I'm saying he's in 6th grade, Eddie. And he goes, yeah, there's so many national tournaments now. These kids are getting eyeballed. And when these kids get eyeballed, they already start to get recruited. And with NIL, now the parents are looking at their kids with dollar signs. So it's surpassing.
What's explain what NIL is.
Name, image, and likeness. The money that these guys are getting now is part of the money grab, because what we just talked about, like those Ohio State football players, they are now entitled to the money grab that comes into the universities because they are performing there as an athlete.
And I think that's right. I think the whole thing is immoral. But since in this mess, these athletes should get some money.
I agree, but that's part of the draw of a Sunday morning wrestling tournament that you have to be at on Saturday night because, it's a 6-hour drive or it's a flight.
Yeah, exactly.
You see what I'm saying? So the draw, as I was saying earlier, the draw away from it is getting severe, but there's also a draw to it. And I just want to hit that real quick. Marcus Freeman puts Notre Dame on the national stage. Tom, I was not a Notre Dame football fan up until 2 months ago when I wasn't. When Brian Kelly was the head coach at Notre Dame, he's now at LSU. I did not like Notre Dame. I didn't like what they stood for because they really didn't stand for anything. And you know how that saying goes. You don't stand for, if you don't stand for something. Yeah. And then Marcus Freeman comes in, 4 years ago. This is 24, 25. And he realizes that there's no team mass. He's a Protestant, and he's starting to really love the rituals and traditions of, as a new coach, of Notre Dame. And this young guy, African-American / Asian, South Korean guy, is suddenly hired. And he goes, we're bringing mass back. And now he's getting into the understanding of mass. And he said, no, we're going to have mass on game day. Because some of the players we get all hyped on game day. Why mass? Because this is the mindset that you need. You need the rituals and the traditions of the mass. And then Marcus Freeman fell in love with the Catholic Church and converted in 2022. That's who was on the football field last night. And so I'm saying, that's the direction. That's what we did with the Virtue program, by the grace of God only. But our football players really began to understand the traditions and the rituals of the Mass, and they saw the masculinity in the Mass because it carried over to the same type of traditions and rituals that we were doing on the football field. That's that good direction I'm talking about. The Marcus Freemans of the world who's really stepping up. I don't know if you watched the game.
No.
Okay. There were, for the winners and the losers, 3 or 4 captains speaking at the microphone. One were a very sad group and the other was a very jubilant group. Tom, I bet you 3 out of 4 talked about our Lord Jesus Christ.
Well, Father Andrew Greeley, now deceased, he was he used to comment that the fighting Irish were really the fighting Black Baptists. And if anybody would say that, it'd be Father Greeley. You said the grace of God.
Gets it.
What's that?
Yes, everybody gets it.
Definitely.
But just let somebody else say it. Well, go ahead.
Well, you said it was the grace of God, for that good thing. Was it the grace of God that Notre Dame lost? I mean, is there a grace in, do they have to suffer that, for humility's sake? And what is it gonna spur them on for next year or something like that? Or what, this is, this idea, that questions like that, like those, we can't make sports, turn them into theology programs or catechism classes, although we should work some of that. And that's obviously what you were talking about with your virtue program. Because sport is really the main religion in this country. And of course, the fact that it's number one sport is on a Sunday for the most part. It's I guess it's marquee games, or it's big day anyway, is Sunday. I mean, it was easy to say years ago because it was only Sunday. Now it's Thursday and then Monday.
That's true.
But still, it just becomes so difficult when there's this big energy. And I would say in the Ignatian tradition, St. Ignatius of Loyola and his spiritual exercises to become spiritually fit, to determine what is a consolation and a desolation, what's a consolation that's coming from God, and not being consoled and thinking that consolation is coming from God, but it's not. It's coming from the dark one. And that these good things, they're going to get me into college. Maybe they're going to give me a scholarship and whatnot. Well, you're serving the wrong master. And parent, you're serving the wrong master. And you're teaching your children that you're serving the wrong master. This is going to be gone in a short time. But then they have your children, they have the rest of their lives. And maybe that 0.001% that makes it to the pinnacle of their sport, and they have that, whatever the award is, they have that. And I know I've read some of this, and I've heard some people, and I know you have more than I have, that they look at that, whether it's a game ball or a trophy or the gold medal or something like that, that's the pinnacle of their lives. I can understand that. But there's that, they were part of a community with their team. They had a father figure, hopefully, in a coach, a good coach anyway, a good father figure from a good coach. And they had mission and purpose. There's meaning to their lives, but that's not true for most by far.
No, it's not true. And a good father figure in the true spirit of good is going to bring you to the truth of their very own creation, the truth of their existence. So a little bit it's more rare than we want it to be to find one. It's also maybe not so rare that it's inside the man, but because of secular expectations and rules and restrictions, it might not come out of that good man. But it needs to come forward more. Let's not forget too that St. Paul, he always he only wrote one time for the most prolific writer in the Bible, but we often read. He's a sports writer. He's the first sports writer. He talks about that perishable wreath, And, here we are with St. Paul in the very same Bible that we read on the pulpit. Once again, while that gym door is getting opened, while the gospel is being read. There's a level of accountability and responsibility. Where we can control it more easily, more readily in the Catholic Church, so they can keep those gym door closed. To not go to Mass is a mortal sin, so why would we fan the fires of allowing it to happen by allowing buses to pull up and take kids in the bus on a Sunday morning and go to a Catholic basketball tournament all day Sunday? Why would we enable such to happen?
Because that trophy has replaced the cross.
Right there in the church parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I'm thinking about I guess we really should close. Whoever's going to be that brave parent, or I can't see it, but I can imagine it. That somehow this would turn, but I don't know. I mean, I've said this before, you go into a pub, and it used to be where you'd have a conversation with the person next to you, or the people on either side of you. But they put the first TV in, and they got the first game on, and then they've got 10 TVs, and everybody's looking at the TVs in the game, and they're not as the fabric of, there's not as strong of a community, and. Wait, this is the city of man, not the city of God. So
yes,
we have work to do, and but it's the kingdom is not here. It's close, right? It's close at hand, but it's not. It's not here yet. So I'm going to read this quote just to close out again from that George Leonard and his book, The Ultimate Athlete. We fail to realize that mastery is not about perfection. It's about a process. A journey. The master is the one who stays on the path day after day, year after year. The master is the one who is willing to try and fail and try again for as long as he or she lives. And that's what Teddy Roosevelt said. The man in the arena. You're bloodied, you're dirty, you may have lost. But
Tom, I'm going to tell the audience right now. When I was a new head coach at Donovan Catholic, you sent me that. You wrote that to me from Teddy Roosevelt, and I put that on our bulletin board when Kevin was a freshman. I don't know if you remember that or not.
Wow!
And I hardly knew you. You were Mr. Caffrey to me. You were one of them. You were one of those parents that I avoided and ran away from. I said it with a big smile. But hey, Tom, what you just read, not about the arena, but that other one, I think you should put it into our show notes and let our people read that. And please send it to me as well. It's outstanding. It speaks to all of us. Boy, I needed to hear that.
We are not human beings. We are human becomings, as my mentor Joseph Gower used to say.
Wow,
all right, brother.
Like
What's coming up next?
Wow, that was nice. Stay tuned, folks, for the Angelus and your prayer intentions. I'm distracted by this. Was good. You got me going. Your prayer intentions with Peter and Jenny.
All right. God bless you, Danny. WQPHradio.org. All right. I'll see you then.
All right. God bless you all.
Thank you for listening to the 13th Apostle with Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey. For more information on Dan, visit his website at www.danduddy.com or email dcduddy@gmail.com. Tom's website is faithpilgrims.com or email trcaffrey@faithpilgrims.com. How about you? Will you be the 13th Apostle?